Carti on my pinky got me feeling. Carti on my pinky got me feeling.
Feel it,
Feel it,
feel it.
feel it.
Marina Bay hosted the Grand Prix that ran in the 60s and 70s. The Garden City re-entered the calendar for good in 2008. We missed it for a couple of years, but it was great to come back to the Singapore Grand Prix. Things have changed slightly around Marina Bay circuit. 4 corners was removed between 16 and 19. Means the lap length is now just over 3 miles. That might come as a welcome relief to the drivers, or especially their brakes. It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. Golden Boy lines up on pole position, edging out Max Verstappen, who'll start on P2. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Perez, Oscar Piastri, Hamilton, Norris, Stroll, Ocon, Albon, Gasly, Magnussen, Fernando Alonso, Hulkenberg, Russell, Bottas, Ricciardo, Joe, Sargent, and Yuki Tsunoda. Now it's time to head down to the track. And joining me in the commentary box today with the best view of what is about to unfold and some strong views on the action we're about to see, the Chef. Now sadly things didn't work out last time. It was a bad race. Question is though, can they recover today?
It is true they had a really tough day in the last time. But it's so important to turn the page and start on a blank slate, because the more you dwell on that, the less it's going to push you in the right direction. So take some notes, obviously there's things to be learned, but move on.
Right, let's get the car up to temperature on this lap, please. We're learning the gears, so let's go through them all if you can. Conditions look stable at the moment, no rain currently expected. Okay, not the best placement there, mate. Let's try and get a good launch as the race starts. Okay, so that's the rest of the grid forming up now. Be patient and watch for those lights. this lap. You can use it when you're within 1 second of the car ahead and in the DRS zone. No issues with tyre wear for now. Keep taking care of them. Great work, that's a new fastest lap of the race. That was the fastest lap of the race. Keep this up. Well done. 5 seconds. worry about the tyre condition for now. Everything's looking good. Okay, mate, right, we've got some clear track in front of us, so let's make best use of it and make the next lap a quick one. You got this. Great stuff, mate. You hit the target well there. Nice one. There's a long way to go in this race, though, so keep your head down. going to be on mediums. Tyre condition still looking good. Okay, we're boxing this lap. Give us the best in lap you can. Charles is in the pits. Remember, box this lap. Keep an eye on your distance to the speed limit line as you approach and make sure you don't speed. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 35.9 seconds. take you this lap. Okay, pit in this lap, and remember the speed limit. We'll be penalised if we exceed it. Keep that in mind as you approach. Okay, off we go, back into the race. Your late turning meant we had a slower than planned pit stop, I'm afraid. Okay, one stop to go, just one stop left in this strategy. Experience some understeer now that you're in the wake of the car ahead. Try to get past as soon as possible.
ahead, 4.0 seconds. No tyre concerns at the moment, just focus on the driving. Job. That was the fastest lap of the race so far. Gap to your teammate behind, 3.3 seconds. Great manoeuvre, you made it look so easy. Okay, mate, we need to save up some ERS, so let's focus on charging it up, please. Yeah, really good job on hitting that target, mate. Nice work. Still a long way to go, though. Okay, no issues with tyre wear for now. Keep taking care of them. We're getting some strange readings from a couple of the sensors, so I don't think you need to be worried, just some bad data, so keep doing what you're doing. I'll let you know if we notice any genuine problems. No need to worry about the tyre condition for now, everything's looking good. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 18.0 seconds. Caution, caution. Okay, clear. Approaching the pit window and you're going to be on mediums. Overtake button more, it's time to utilise some of this energy, come on. stop now. Okay, the pit window's open, so let's box this lap, box this lap. Pit now. Gap to your teammate behind, 49.1 seconds. Tyre condition still looking good. Okay, mate, we're not using as much fuel as we need to, so let's burn through some more now so that we're not too heavy at the end of the race. Understood. Stopping this lap. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 47.7 seconds. Right, let's go, come on! That stop wasn't great, we've lost some time there. That was our last stop, no more scheduled pit stops, let's go. Battery charge is high, let's use that overtake button a bit more. Okay, unlucky mate, that wasn't quite what we needed, but let's not worry about it. Get your head down and chin up, there's a long way to go. No tyre concerns at the moment, just focus on the driving. your teammate behind, 21.0 seconds. No issues with tyre wear for now. We'll keep taking care of them. You're leading the pack, that's P1. Norris is behind you. Okay, they're on old, hard tyres. Look after these tyres now, we want to finish the race on this compound. Okay, we're into the last 10 laps now. got a lot of spare energy. Okay to use your overtake button. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 22.7 seconds. lap, final lap of the race. Gap to your teammate behind, 24.1 seconds. Fantastic drive, that's just fantastic. Amazing, you deserved that race win. Well done, mate.
What a great race it's been then. Another classic Singapore Grand Prix. And they've held on to take the checkered flag here today.
Every single lap of the race, it was a light to flag victory, and that is total dominance.
Ferrari are at it again. An excellent performance at today's Grand Prix, and they're certainly a team that know what they're doing out there. Well, that was certainly an exciting weekend of Formula One. Be sure to join us for more exciting Formula One action very soon.
I'm reclaiming the trench coat, who from and what for? Cause I wear it when I'm headed off to war. Yeah, the longer the cut, the tougher you are. A man drags along the floor, through the sweatshop shrapnel. It gets trapped in my car.
Okay, everybody! Welcome here to the Singaporean Flyer! Welcome to Singapore, Singapore! For the final lap! William! The Smiling Sun champion! Who is leading by almost 24 seconds in the 2024 edition of the Singaporean Grand Prix! Look at the buildings! Marina Bay Sands! Singapore Flyer there in the background. Sector 1 done. This was a great display, just like Belgium GP, of amazing driving ability. Great racecraft. Now this was the Singapore swing. We stay nearby here, but now around the Fullerton Hotel is relatively easy. Here you have to really go on the power Anderson Bridge. We have a lot of videos from here. This is all history, guys. This is the Esplanade. Great place to sit over here. As we just finished the second sector and the final sector over here, as we go to the Marina Bay of Singapore on lap 62. Out of 62, we go back to the Singaporean Flyer with Marina Bay Sands there to my right on the background. Here we taking lots of pictures. The final two corners. And this is it. Our second ever victory in Singapore. Wow, let's hear the crowd. Fantastic, of course. What a great victory. Of course, what a great victory, you guys. Oh yeah, we always win in this fashion, and that's 15 out of 18. What an amazing win over here. Amazing win. Let's celebrate it, and this will put us, we could have become a world champions, but yeah, definitely, we will become next race if we win. Oh yeah, come on. This is Jan, the Smiling Sun champion, the race winner of Singaporean Grand Prix. Oh yeah, let's go boys, let's go. Yeah, what a great result over here. Yeah, of course we are at it again. Yeah, you know, even the wheel had to be restarted twice during the race, but yeah, in the end, comfortable victory ahead of our two title challengers. And the first place goes to, oh yeah! Yay! We are the winners! Singapore, baby! Yes! So this definitely makes up for last year when we retired, so let's celebrate! 15 victories! Never achieved by us before! Now we are only 4 from the record! Wow! Okay!
Well, that was certainly an exciting
Yes!
Formula 1. Be sure to join us for more exciting Formula 1 action very soon.
That was it, yeah, we had the fastest lap. That was over 1.2 seconds faster, so yeah, fantastic result, you know, almost 100 minutes over here, you know, around Singapore. Obviously it's very humid, you know, it's hard to take any rest over here, but we managed it. I mean, this was a great victory. You know, I have to say I managed it right from the start, me and Charles. So we actually went and started on soft tires. We didn't want to be overtaken because we didn't know if it was easy, you know, if overtaking was going to be easy or not, right? It turned out to be that for me it was relatively easy, but not for the others, because I obviously had an amazing, over 1 second faster, almost 2 seconds faster than the real F1 driver's pace, and it paid off as we are recording with our brand new iPhone 14, obviously the scarlet red the iPhone 14, but yeah, I got a pretty good launch, you know. Leclerc immediately went right behind me, so we were with the Ferrari 1-2. In the end, he finished 4th, because, you know, the strategy, he went from soft, so red tires to medium, yellow tires, and hard, the white tires. I did soft, medium, but pretty much everybody did medium, hard, and, you know, on the hards, they were just slow. So I definitely, you know, had the advantage, obviously, at the beginning, but by the time I made the first pit stop on lap 18, I was only leading by 5 seconds from Verstappen, so It was far, from being decided, but the tire wear, the management was amazing. I even finished with full battery. That's how good I really was over here around Singapore. Hardly made any mistakes. There were a couple of lockups, especially coming down the Esplanade. I think 3 times it happened that couldn't quite slow down, but overall, I mean, this was just a perfect performance. The car was just plenty. This is the 15th win, as I said, out of the 18 races, and finally we are back on. We obviously were put under the pressure because ever since we started winning in this, the renewed Formula E, right, from 2022, we've pretty much then never had 2 races when we didn't win. And we should have won in Italy. Baku obviously was an outlier, but we had a chance to win there, and here in Singapore, basically from the time trial, from the first practice, we knew we were on it. Perfect weekend over here. We could have led almost every lap, but with the tire strategy, obviously we always had to stop early, but it was good because the undercut is very powerful. Like, I was leading Leclerc by 10 seconds. Then when I came out of the pits, he was just 2 seconds behind. So yeah, in the end, I think the strategy worked well. Use definitely soft tires because obviously Singapore is a street track. And I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much to all the fans over here. This is our 15th victory, and the second victory here in Singapore. And this time obviously we've really shown just how great we are. And yeah, now we will take that almost that long break, and then we will go to the Americas. And yeah, we can be pretty much champions, if we win the sprint, or if we don't win it, but if we win the main race in Austin. So we are definitely looking forward to it. We cannot wait. What a great victory. And now let's celebrate around some of the most famous places in Singapore, such as the Marina Bay Sands, Singapore Flyer, obviously the Esplanade, the Singapore Airline. You could have seen it all, and you can see it also on YouTube. But now let's jump into the highest swimming pool in the world at the top of Marina Bay Sands and celebrate! Forza Ferrari! Let's go, Jan Svaling, champion, almost 4-time Ferrari Formula 1 World Champion! Hello everybody, and welcome here to the home of Jan Svaling, champion, and celebrating Jan Svaling, champion, as we are back to the winning ways. Oh yeah, at the long last, obviously, after both Italian and Azerbaijan Grand Prix here, we have scored a very popular, very decisive victory in that fight for this 2024-2024 FI Formula 1 Drivers World Championship, our 15th win of this record-breaking season. We have won the Singaporean Grand Prix for only the 2nd time in our career, as we are celebrating over here. We are absolutely ecstatic. What an amazing race. It was, it featured lots of fights, basically 3 teams, in fight for a victory, grueling 62 laps in this, the tropical equator heat, and the super humid heat, as you can imagine over here. As I have driven it with this beautiful SF1000T818 Formula 1 racing simulator, and I was really pleased, with how the race went, how we executed it. Once again, I managed to finish here on the podium twice. I looked out, my 2nd pole position, and I also managed to finally, score the fastest lap, which is, I've always scored the fastest lap in this record-breaking season, which was obviously absolutely critical, right? As in this beautiful fashion, beautiful looking cars, we are so, so successful over here. So in this exclusive race reaction, you've already seen just how well controlled I was around, this is one of the most challenging tracks, obviously, on the Formula 1 calendar, the Marina Bay Straight circuit. It was amazing just how controlled I was, as I could, explain to you, everything around the circuit. It was almost like a half lap, that we were doing there, but it was actually the final lap of the race. And yeah, we will take a look at, obviously, the race highlights, so that, this time, obviously, there's plenty to see in the race highlights, and a very important, fight, especially in the middle of the race, as we had several different drivers on different strategies. And then we will take a look at the drivers and the Constructors' Championship, and just how close we are to winning the title. This is obviously the first Grand Prix that we could have been lifting, not just this golden Formula 1 Grand Prix winner trophy, but that coveted Formula 1 Drivers World Championship, which is absolutely amazing. We will then celebrate with the podium after we take a look at the constructor standings, also my rating, everything's coming up, so you guys will love this race reaction. So You know, as you've already seen in that beautiful video, obviously, you know, you've seen in that amazing second Singaporean pole position on that Scuderia Red Retina Amic right behind me. I was absolutely planted, very, very satisfied, very happy with it. You know, this was the lap, you know, that I really needed. And, you know, it also meant, because obviously everybody, you know, it wasn't raining, right? So great, very, very important. Otherwise, that would make the Singaporean Grand Prix quite difficult. We had a great setup. You know, we also had you know, the new set of hard tires, new set of mediums like everybody else. But we also, you know, managed to get another set of, you know, mediums and obviously, you know, the softs as well. So, you know, that's very, very important because it gives you lots of strategic options. And you won't feel it so much at the beginning, but as the race will progress and most of the drivers, as you know, then stop for the hard tires, the white mark tires, obviously they suffered a lot. We put in quite a lot of fuel. You know, I have to say we used, you know, almost a lap worth of fuel more, you know, than, you know, if we would have underfueled the car. So, you know, we didn't need to do any management, which was also very important as we obviously, you know, had to do some overtaking on a track to really, you know, secure this very, very popular victory here in Singapore. So, you know, again, you know, you can see obviously all that setup. You know, we put in, you know, quite a lot of fuel, you know, of 2 laps, you know, of fuel worth more, so that, you know, we didn't have any issues. And we started, because we are Scuderia Red Ferrari, so we started on red marked the soft tires. And, you know, Charles Leclerc did the same behind me, and it basically meant, because everybody else was on the yellow mediums, that, you know, Leclerc had such a great start. He's gotten right behind me. You know, I didn't start that well as the 5 lights, you know, went off. I already struggled a little bit at a formation lap, as obviously you always say, you know, have to, you know, put in that clutch. So, you know, it's not easy, you know, it's a track that I've been to. So, you know, thankfully it's a short run up to turn 1. So I was able to hold the position. You know, thankfully there were no shenanigans this time from Verstappen, unlike 7 years ago, where, you know, if he hit me, he would put me and Charles, you know, out of the race. So, you know, it was close, you know, but I just went for it. Verstappen, you know, had to yield, and Leclerc obviously ran out of the road, you know, on the right hand side. And, you know, for a few laps, you know, Charles was keeping up with me. Also, you know, the medium shot runners were not so far away. So yeah, I was not really worried, but I knew, you know, this was gonna be a proper race. But yeah, I, you know, did a good job. You know, I could use a lot of fuel, also used quite a lot of the tires. You know, the races, as you can see, 62 laps. So this is one of the longest races. But nowadays, you know, it takes, you know, place over the course of, you know, significantly less time. You know, still almost 100 minutes. But, you know, we're not gonna get to the 2 hours of racing time, which of course is great. You know, especially for the younger drivers, even though I could easily handle it. But yeah. You know, it pretty much meant, you know, that because we have 62 laps, so we decided to do 16, 23, 23, right? So, you know, again, the soft tires, you know, we had to dispatch them, you know, at one point or the other. And yeah, Charles, he did stop first, you know, so I did establish a bit of a gap, and you could tell, you know, that there was that crossover at around lap 10, 12, you know, when Leclerc lost the second position to Verstappen, but crucially, I was able to keep away from Verstappen and, you know, maintain the same lead. Actually, you know, increase it nicely, you know, again, impeccable driving. So I was very, very pleased with it, and I was really determined, you know, to get the Singaporean Grand Prix win, because, you know, last year we didn't have a good race. We also retired when we were fighting in the middle of the pack, so we definitely wanted this victory. So, you know, we kind of tried to go for that Grand Prix Grand Slam, as you know, right? So I tried to extend it, you know, so when you are in the lead, you know, the others are not stopping. I knew that Leclerc, you know, would fall behind and would have to do some overtaking, so I was kind of safe. I was like, okay, let's, you know, extend it for a couple more laps. But, you know, the tires, you know, they were simply going, and, you know, I had to change to the medium tires, right? But some drivers, you know, because we ran almost 20 laps on the soft set of tires, obviously on a medium, you could then, you know, easily run 25 to 30, which then gives you the possibility to do the one stop. And this is exactly what happened, right? So, you know, what happened was actually very simple. You know, I stopped, right? You know, then I emerged, I believe, in the 6th position behind Alonso. As I was catching him and also Hamilton, then they stopped for the tires. And, you know, then I, you know, had to spend about 3 to 5 laps, you know, to catch the leading trio of, surprisingly, Piastri, then leading from Perez, Norris, you know, my championship, you know, rival being 3rd. So, you know, despite the McLarens obviously qualifying poorly, you know, they were already able to, for example, overtake Perez, who started 4th, let's not forget. Yeah, and, you know, it was quite interesting, because I was behind them and I realized that they were going to do one-stop strategy. So, all of a sudden, if I was going to overtake them, then I was just gonna disappear to the distance because I knew that I would be about 1 to 2 seconds faster, so I would just disappear into the distance, and that would be the race victory. But I had to overtake them, right? So thankfully the reprofiled Singapore, especially going around that Marina Bay over here, where for example some great hotels like the ones where we hopefully will stay next time, because again we didn't have a room when we went to Singapore, as you can see on the YouTube channel. But some places like Mandarin Oriental, we know better Mandarin Orientals, as you guys know, are there as you obviously go up to the Singaporean Flyer on that Marina Bay, which provides one of the best views of Singapore, especially when it's a beautiful sunny sky blue day. I knew that there was a possibility, obviously, also when you go on Raffles Boulevard, so it wasn't that difficult. Obviously didn't have so much of a crossover because I was also on the medium tires, so I couldn't just drive around the drivers in some of the turns, and it did work quite well because I was able to keep behind, and then slowly I picked up Norris, under braking. It was a bit difficult, but picked up Perez, and also Piastri as well, and that was very critical, right? Because when I emerged from the pits, I had about a 5-second advantage over Verstappen, who obviously was right behind me, right? And then, we obviously had, Leclerc then, catching up. So, as you will see in the race highlights, 6 drivers, pretty much fighting for the victory, which was, again, amazing, definitely, enjoyed it. And, we were simply going for it, right? So we decided, okay, let's overtake them if we can. We could, and with the Verstappen and my teammate, getting stuck over there behind, obviously, the 2 McLarens and the Red Bull of Perez, that was exactly what we needed, right? So we then established, that big gap, and then we, had at one point, the lead of, over half a minute. But obviously I knew that, I had to stop for the tires again, then everybody stopped for the hard tires. So I knew that I could go to the mediums, and, that's pretty much when I knew the race was won. I stopped for the mediums, had about roughly, I think about 18, 19 laps to go, 10 seconds ahead of Norris. Obviously, the undercut is very, very powerful. That's how Vettel won in the real 2019 Singaporean Grand Prix. Let's remember, you can easily get 3 to 5 laps. So, that undercut obviously cost me quite a chunk of a lap time. I have to say I was a bit surprised that, the McLarens were still just, 10 seconds behind me. But yeah, that was, basically there. I was so controlled because once I emerged, from the pits, I had a tire advantage, fresher tires, one set softer, obviously compound, and I was just then going for it and won, very comfortably, by 20 seconds in the end from Verstappen. So Verstappen and Norris, my closest challengers, sadly, made it onto the podium. But that means that the title fight is going to go to Austin. But I'm pretty sure, in Austin, obviously we do not need to win and hope for others' misfortune. Also, you can see Leclerc finishing 4th. So all of the drivers really wanted to stay in the title fight. They did a good job. But we can be celebrating this great victory, right? So how exactly did it happen? So everybody, let's take a look over here. At the race highlights. Okay, so race highlights obviously being very, very important, because they can show you exactly what happened, during the race. So let me pull them over. Okay. So, me starting obviously, next to Verstappen, we knew, that was gonna be dangerous over here. So this is the start. But crucially, you can see the red bar tires, obviously on both Ferraris, because we are Ferrari. And let's go, come on! Yes, look at it. Leclerc immediately attacking me as well as Verstappen. Wow, look at that fight. And Verstappen had to cut the first corner. So great, that we didn't touch, nothing happened there. And yes, obviously, we were then just going for it. And this is after the stop. So me, Leclerc, Verstappen, Leclerc did a good job, obviously overtaking Verstappen, undercutting him there. You can see, so I then caught Piastri, Perez, and Norris, right? And obviously they would be 1 or 2 seconds slower, right? So clearly over here, that was costing me lots of lap time. Here I dispatch Norris. Good job, Jan Smalling, champion. And as Ferrari's fastest drivers, you can see these focused eyes over here as we are going to go around the final turn over here. Lap 24, obviously, with 48 laps to go. So this is basically, 38 laps to go. So a lot to play for. And you can see here at the Esplanade, you can sit there and enjoy a beautiful, warm equatorial day. But here, I was overtaking Perez like a champion. But look at it, Perez wouldn't give it up over here. So, I had to overtake him basically twice. Did a good job over there, Come on! And that was absolutely critical because look, Leclerc immediately on Norris's tail as well as Verstappen. So if I wanted the victory, this was absolutely critical, and it's great that the highlights really show, this, 3 teams, 6 drivers, obviously, orange McLarens, the Red Bulls, and the Scarlet Red Ferraris over here, fighting for a victory. 3 drivers, on a 1-stop strategy, 3 drivers, on the 2-stop strategy, the world champions. Obviously knew which strategy was faster, so this was a proper race, so I think Singapore was loving it. Then Piastri obviously being the leader, being the only one without the DRS. We've got the name, and that's how we won it! Yeah, and that was absolutely critical over here, right? So, yes, we were able to dispatch him nicely over here, at the end of the Raffles Boulevard, and then, we would obviously going under across the Anderson Bridge, we would simply be able, to claim the Grand Prix victory! Yes! So absolutely amazing. So this is how the race really panned out, and I was happy, that I managed it ever so well. So over here, let's take a look at the driver standing, shall we? So Yann Chami from 400 points, obviously only driver in the 400 points, going down to perfect 426, thanks to obviously my first ever fastest lap in Singapore. We're getting that all important 1 point and 25 for victory. Second is Max Verstappen for Red Bull, 264 points. Third, Lando Norris McLaren, 261 points. Fourth, then my teammate Charles Leclerc for Scuderia Ferrari, 247 points. So yeah, that's a pity because Leclerc was on a real run, obviously winning the last 2 GPs, but he's still well within the hand for the second in the championship. Wouldn't that be amazing, if the reigning in-game world champion still finished second to me, then Leclerc would definitely be the strongest teammate I ever had. Fifth, Oscar Piastri, McLaren, 176 points, bit of a surprise, but yeah, he's there. Sixth, Fernando Alonso, Aston Martin, 148 points, 10 points down is 7, George Russell, Mercedes MG Petronas didn't really feature in the Singaporean Grand Prix, 138 points, 8, Sergio Perez, Red Bull, 101 points, and then 9, Lewis Hamilton, our future Ferrari teammate, still not even in 100 points for Mercedes MG Petronas, torrid last season, 94 points, only 10 is Alexander Albon, Williams, 29 points, obviously Aston Martin, and Mercedes, they would complete that top 5, so, some good points there, as well, and it will be interesting to also see who finishes 10th. But yeah, overall, you can already see, the fights, and the 162 points is the difference. As you can see on that beautiful calendar there to my left, we have 6 Grand Prix to go, so that's 150 points and 3 sprint races, so that's 176 points. So over here, it is very clear, actually after the sprint, the Texas sprint, I can already be champion. The difference, then it's only 168 points on offer. So if I manage, obviously, to keep the gap to Leclerc, but especially if Norris, doesn't finish, higher than 5th, and for Verstappen, obviously, if he doesn't finish higher than 7th, I will be a world champion. So it is very, very close. We will see if that will happen. Well, the constructor standings looks really good. Scuderia Ferrari leading with 673 points. Great lead of 236 points. Obviously, still cannot win at Austin, but getting ever so close. With me behind the wheel, we are always champions. Second, McLaren, 437 points. Third, Red Bull, 365 points. 4, Mercedes MG Petronas, 232 points. 5, Aston Martin, 173 points. Then we have 6, Williams, 29 points. 7, Alpine, 22 points. Then 8, Visakesh RB, 6 points. Obviously, the top of 5 teams, they usually collect most of the points. So some teams like 9 has 5 points. 10 kicks out with only 1 point, are not really having that many points, are they? So over here, everybody, let's celebrate, because I'm sure you guys, cannot really wait to be celebrating with Jan, the Smalley champion. Let's go! Yes! And great fireworks, obviously, coming on.
Just fantastic, amazing.
Yes.
Deserved that race. Well done, mate.
My second victory, and that gives you so much confidence because it's a street circuit. So yeah, obviously it's absolutely critical, to win it. The fact that I had almost still 100% battery is, as good as it really gets. Let's celebrate! And I'm back on the top for 15 win of the season. Yes. That's it, total dominance, as they said. Obviously, it wasn't that perfect Grand Slam, because I had to relinquish the lead for about 10 laps. But hey, you guys, are you guys ready? Let's go!
There's certainly a team that know what they're doing out there.
Exactly, of course, we know what we are doing, right? Everybody, 3, 2, 1, let's go! Yeah! We got it! Wow! La 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 la! Let's celebrate! La 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 la! For Boulevard Grand Prix winner! 2-time Singapore Grand Prix, Singapore Airlines winner! Yeah! La 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 la! Let's go, yes! Alex champion! Let's go, yeah! Wow! 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 Yeah, absolutely amazing! We are so happy that the game saved forever. This is absolutely amazing, guys. And yeah, I'm absolutely ecstatic because obviously, we were a little bit worried, ever since basically beginning of that 2023 season when I was getting to grips with the ground effect cars. That was the last time when I didn't, in 3 races didn't win. So thankfully, I managed to win here, which is obviously very, very important. So over here, everybody, let's take a look at it. This is my overall rating. So this is the great feature, obviously, here of this carrier mode that you can always see your overall rating. So I stayed at 78, but getting very close to 79, which means I will beat my rival, the rating rival, which is Lance Stroll. I don't know how that happened over there, but you can see my experience going to 70, kind of staying there with racecraft at 75. Awareness, improved to 74. This was well executed race. I didn't lose any wins, and this is how the proper racing should be. Pace 82, I improve, obviously getting Singapore pole position didn't hurt. And great, that focus getting to 68, obviously, with the focus, once you always, starting from the pole position, it's a little bit difficult, to improve on it. But yeah, overall, great victory. And finally, we can celebrate, with the trophy, can you believe, that pretty much, the last Grand Prix I won was, the Dutch Grand Prix, back in August. This is the last race, obviously, in September took almost a month, you can't believe, right? Because I've been pretty much winning it. We had 21 overall races, 3 sprints, 18 Grand Prix, and won 17 out of 21. That's how good I was. 2 out of 3 sprints, 15 out of 18 Grand Prix. And now we will actually have a long break. So that will be quite interesting over there because after let's go over here. Yes, it looks just wonderful, doesn't it? So yeah, there will be this long break, which of course is a little bit surprising. Yeah, but that's how the scheduling goes. So then in the second part of the October, as obviously that super hot sunny summer moves into the decisive fall season, we will be fighting and chasing that world championship, and I cannot wait. Obviously, then going to the Americas, Austin, Mexico, and then Brazil. We are quite confident, definitely for Brazil, for Mexico, but obviously United States Grand Prix and Austin, we've only won it once, but hey, look what happened in Singapore. It's a record-breaking season. I cannot wait to continue racing, right? So you guys, this was the exclusive race reaction. I hope you enjoyed, the whole weekend. Couldn't have asked really for a better weekend. Top practice 1, practice 2, practice 3. Top all the qualifying sessions. And actually, all of the top times that I said in the practice and qualifying sessions would be good enough for pole position over here. And yeah, also with that fastest lap, 1.5 seconds faster. We've really shown a real pace. And this is a very, very satisfying victory, as you could see live. And now, all I can say is, we are at the equator, so it's always between 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. It's always hot. Most of the times it is sunny. So let's pick one of the glorious swimming pools, perhaps, the highest, swimming pool in the world, place at the top of these, triplets, the Marina Bay Sands Hotel. And let's celebrate with our Singaporean Airlines Singapore Grand Prix, Formula 1 Grand Prix with a trophy. Let's celebrate!